Hello and welcome to the Bloodstream Podcast, a show serving the greater bleeding disorders community, brought to you by Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media, and made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. I'm your patient advocate and host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I'm your healthcare advocate, nonprofit nerd, and your other host, Amy Bradford, reminding you to please speak with a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
On today's show, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a Rare Disease Day.
Yes!
Get your zebra stripes going. Amy, I should have planned for this. I should have worn something black and white.
I should have worn stripes!
But I've neglected. Don't be like us and
Don't be like
show
us.
your stripes. That's the main message for today. Thanks for listening. Anyway, it is Rare Disease Day. We'll talk a little about that. We also did an interview with the WFH's Glenn and Emna to talk about the upcoming CCS, their Comprehensive Care Summit. They're going to tell us what that's all about in just a little bit. And we've got the latest from our gene therapy segment with a new host, Hannah Berry. Ever heard of her? She welcomes Dr. Mark Kay and genetic counselor Kaylee Dollerschell on today's segment that is made possible thanks to CSL Behring. We have got all that and more on today's show. Welcome to Bloodstream.
Listeners, as always, thank you for joining us today. And if you like what you hear, please share this episode with your friends and your family on the social medias and all the things. And if you haven't subscribed to the Bloodstream Podcast,
Then you're a lost
subscribe.
cause. No.
Subscribe.
No, it's
We're
too late.
so fun.
It's too
Just
late.
do it.
All right, fine. I also want to remind you, dear listeners, that yes, the Bloodstream Podcast is indeed made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. Yes, that's right. Takeda. Takeda believes in a world free of bleeds, and they've got this website, bleedingdisorders.com, where you can learn all about their resources for and commitment to the bleeding disorders community. They are dedicated more than ever in their efforts to offer a wide range of programs and support to help patients throughout their treatment journey, wherever on that journey they may be. And you can learn more by simply visiting bleedingdisorders.com. One more time, because that's bleedingdisorders.com. And for their founding and ongoing support of the Bloodstream Podcast, I would like to say thanks, Takeda.
Thank you, Takeda. It's Rare Disease Day. Let's celebrate. Big time, big time, big time. It's my favorite day.
What do you like about it?
Well, this Rare Disease Day is very important. As we know, there is new stuff going on in Washington, and there is a lot of question marks when it comes to some of the things that makes our community click. Research, funding towards that research, drug advancement, the speed and the efficiency which that happens. Our researchers, our physicians, our patients are all nervous. And so today, this Rare Disease Day is really important. We are stronger when we're all together. And so make sure to share that voice and get on out there.
Yeah, well said. It is the one day of the calendar year where we as a larger rare disease community around the world kind of say, hey, today's our day to show up and show out. And you're right, Amy, there are some circumstances, every year, and we've been doing this podcast now for 9 years. So every year, the circumstances are different. The environment may be, more favorable or less favorable. There may have been some recent drug discovery that's got everybody excited and some bill that will help it reach more people because it's an access. And then there are times where it seems as though everything is stacked against us. I think the important thing is that we always stay committed to advancing the cause. So when things are good, that's not a reason to disconnect. When things are overwhelming and bad, that's not a reason to disconnect either. Take care of yourself and do what you need to do, but don't disconnect. Because it's so much harder when we're fragmented. Like Amy said, we're always stronger together. And this is the one day a year that we stop to reflect on that. So Rare Disease Day, y'all, it's more than just zebras. It's about something life-changing for a lot of people. So happy Rare Disease Day. Now, Amy, a little bit of a reality check, so to speak.
Yes.
There was some recent news that a certain gene therapy has been discontinued. Can you shine a light on that? What is that story about?
Yes, the hemophilia B gene therapy Becvez is halting. It's halting all development and commercialization. Evidently, there is weak demand for that particular gene therapy, and so they are putting a stop to the commercialization. So Becvez will not be available for patients with hemophilia B. That company that is owns that product also has another product that was approved, I believe, in October. It's called Himpavzi, and they are very excited about it. It's for hemophilia A. And so that drug is still moving forward. But anyway, that's some big news in our gene therapy landscape. It's our big news.
Unusual in the fact that, the clinical trial processes will see a program discontinued if the data does not meet its primary endpoints, right? In phase one, if it's not deemed to be safe or efficacious, then we're not going to move forward. In phase two, if the dosing alterations don't work, then there's more adjustment needed before we can move to phase three. So there's an iterative process so that if a certain
Right.
point it's clear, you know what, this isn't going the way it needs to, the program can be discontinued. But you're right, Amy, it's quite rare in our community for there to be a product commercially available that is then halted due to a quote lack of interest. I think it is important to highlight it is a lack of interest and nothing to do with the safety or efficacy profile of Becvez. So if you did take Becvez, there's no reason to think that this halting of its commercialization has anything to do with your body. Just to make that clear, it is a commercial business decision. It is not a science-based decision. And there's a bunch of reasons this may be. I don't want to overly speculate, but it's worth noting that a hemophilia B gene therapy was FDA approved and commercialized before Becvez. And you'll hear the term first mover advantage. So we saw with BioMarin, right, the first commercially available hemophilia A gene therapy. Arguably, BioMarin had an advantage being the first mover, but in that case, their data was not where it needed to be in order for that product to have the life cycle that everyone hoped it would. So things changed. On the other hand, the other hemophilia B product does have a really strong profile. So in that case, this is just me speculating, but I think there was a first mover advantage there that hurt the opportunity for Becvez. We're talking about a rare disease population, rare within rare, right? Hemophilia B. It's only about
Hemophilia B is
only
rare
about
within rare.
20%
Yeah.
the size of hemophilia A. So
Yeah.
was there space enough for two viable gene therapy products in this, first wave of AAV gene therapy? I guess not, is what, at least that's the decision that ultimately Pfizer made. So it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it is a demonstration of the process and ultimately in a commercial setting, frankly, Amy, the marketplace dictating the terms. It wasn't something that was meant to
Mhm.
go forward, and so it is not. But to your point, there are other products that they are working on that will serve other elements of the community, and those are notable. But I just wanted us to provide some clarity on what exactly that halting was all about, and I think we've now done
Mm.
that. Um, I want to touch on one other thing, a little bit straying from our world of rare and chronic blood disorders, Amy, just before we get into our first interview segment. I went to a movie last night.
Heyo.
So, not bragging, but it was a big deal. The Slam Dance Film Festival, we were invited to see a film there called Complicated. My wife, Natalie, was a camp counselor of one of the pediatric patients who are featured in this film. And I also have separately known the producer for many years. This was a film that was created over 7 years, focusing on young people that have one of the most prevalent conditions in the rare space, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndromes. It's a connective tissue disease.
Mhm.
It is extremely misunderstood. The film highlights that some notable people in American history, including a recent Miss America winner and Elvis Presley, had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or a version of it. And that is one of the reasons that Elvis's dance moves and abilities were what they were, because he had this connective tissue disease. It's a
Mm.
spectrum like all diseases, but what this film looks at is how in some of these particularly complicated cases, because this is one of those rare diseases, there are many rare diseases that are complicated, but I think EDS is making a case for being amongst the most complicated. This film looks at the pain that can be squeezed onto the families, the spotlight that can befall the parents, and we know this in hemophilia and von Willebrand disease. Kid shows up to school and has bruises, and someone says something about maybe it's the parents, and it can create a nightmare for those parents. Well, this film looks at some pretty dramatic examples of when, frankly, the medical system fails these children, fails their families, and frankly adds to the pain and suffering. It is not a film meant to attack the medical community, but to shine a light on the complexity of something like EDS and rare diseases, and how when the system mishandles things, there are dire consequences that are paid by these patients and families, though the medical system rarely ever takes any accountability for its behavior. So I strongly recommend checking out Complicated. It's not available right now. It is currently in the film festival part of its life cycle. We'll have a link in the program notes to Complicated the movie wfh.movie.com. That's where you can go to watch the trailer, read more about it. And if you are a health advocate, and if you are someone who believes that we need to be telling great stories to change the way in which healthcare is administrated in the US and around the world, but in the US, I cannot recommend enough that you watch Complicated. It makes an irrefutable case for change, and I just want to be part of the chorus of voices that is helping to push this film out into the world. So check out complicatedthemovie.com.
So cool. Thank you for bringing that up, PJL. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so there's the end of my movie segment for today. The next segment, a little bit more on topic. Glenn, we've had on the podcast many times before. Emna, first time we learned a little about her and her work at the World Federation of Hemophilia. The purpose of the interview was to talk about this comprehensive care summit that is coming up in April in Dubai. I will be there, and we'll be talking about that here on Bloodstream when it comes. But what is it, and why is it important? How is it differentiated from other meetings and activities that the WFH is responsible for? That's what Glenn and Emna get into. On a quick technical note, Emna joined first. Glenn joined a little late. We had a little bit of trickiness. We're in, 4 different countries or whatever. So there'll be a little technical, whatever, but I think we'll all survive it. I just wanted to give you the heads up. Anyway, enjoy the interview. I'm joined by Emna Guider of the World Federation of Hemophilia. We were just chatting about her involvement with the World Federation since 2001, now a board member since 2022. And she's joining me today to talk a little bit about the upcoming Comprehensive Care Summit. Emna, it's nice to meet you, and thanks for joining me on Bloodstream.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, and it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Are you in Canada with the WFH, or are you calling in from elsewhere in the world?
I'm in Tunisia, so I'm from Tunisia now, in Tunis, the capital.
Thanks for making the time in Tunisia. I have no idea what time it is there, but I'll just say thank you for making the time whatever time it is.
It's 8 p.m.
Okay, not awfully late, but certainly later than usual. So thank you for the accommodation. We talk on the podcast about the World Federation quite often. Believe Limited, my company that produces these, has been working as a partner to the WFH for many years, and in particular, highlighting the efforts in the humanitarian aid program. We've also participated and done coverage from the World Congresses. But the Comprehensive Care Summit is a unique event and one of the pillars of the World Federation that we really haven't discussed here on the podcast before. So for our community members who are listening and maybe have never heard about the Comprehensive Care Summit, can you please tell us what is it and how does it fit into the WFH's mission?
Okay, so the Comprehensive Care Summit is an event that happened between the World Congress of the World Federation of Hemophilia. It used to be known as Musculoskeletal Congress, and it became more open to other healthcare providers by including with the musculoskeletal track 2 other tracks, one dedicated for the medical track and another one dedicated for the persons with bleeding disorders, which was called the multidisciplinary track. So it's an event where you will be updated as usual on all the musculoskeletal care in persons with bleeding disorders, with the physio, with the hematologist, with the orthopedist, so as a multidisciplinary team. And in parallel, 2 other tracks, one medical tracks with all the new results on the last clinical trial, the best approaches, how to improve the care, and another one dedicated to the persons with bleeding disorders, involving also many subjects that you are concerned with as a community with bleeding disorders.
That was an excellent overview. Thank you for that. I'm looking at the website now, so I can say with confidence that this year's Comprehensive Care Summit is taking place April 23rd, 24th, and 25th in Dubai. If you are interested in learning more, you can go to wfh.org/CCS for Comprehensive Care Summit 2025. So wfh.org/CCS 2025, 2025. I'm curious, Emna, well, number one, I appreciate the shift from musculoskeletal to comprehensive care in the title. And I don't think that's as rudimentary as a simple title change. I think it's reflective of a change in philosophy that a summit like this needs to go beyond musculoskeletal and look at the comprehensive care offered, of which musculoskeletal is a part. So I learned something already, and I appreciate the reason that that title has been shifted. Can you help our audience appreciate any priorities for this year's Comprehensive Care Summit? What are you most excited to tell people will be offered this year?
The comprehensive care of a persons with bleeding disorders. As you know, the care of persons with inherited bleeding disorders is not limited to only one healthcare providers or two healthcare providers. Many stakeholders are involved in the care of persons with bleeding disorders, including the persons themselves and how they make an important role in the path of the care of their conditions. So it's a comprehensive view of the care of inherited bleeding disorders.
Perfect. That is well said. Appreciate that, Emna. And I'm excited to say that Glenn Pierce is now joining us as well. Glenn, good to see you as always. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I will say Emna's done a great job kind of answering the few initial questions on what is the Comprehensive Care Summit, providing some background on the shift from the musculoskeletal branding of the summit to something a little bit more wide-lensed, which I reflected. I appreciate what that means to me. And she walked through the various tracks and sort of overarching qualities of the summit. Glenn, kind of picking up from there, is there something about this year's summit that you are particularly interested in, excited about, passionate about, or want people to know about?
This is a back to basics kind of comprehensive care summit to really revisit how comprehensive care is evolving in the midst of advances in the technologies that have brought us new treatments. And so how do we deal with different populations of patients, both from a perspective of men, women, factor 8, factor 9 deficiency, other bleeding disorder deficiencies such as von Willebrand disease, and how do we deal with it in areas where countries don't necessarily have access to all of the products that other countries do? How do we make up for that deficiency in treatment and yet still be able to provide comprehensive care to the best advantage for patients?
The World Congress meeting that's held every other year is perhaps that which most community members affiliate the WFH with in terms of an event. And I'll speak for myself. Historically, that was true for me before I better came to know the organization. Glenn first, and then Emna, if you can add some additional comments. What makes the Comprehensive Care Summit unique for those attending? How is the experience differentiated from the World Congress and other events the WFH supports?
The World Congress every other year is much larger and goes into much more detail on the state of the art of treatment of various bleeding disorders. It also includes research components for products that may not yet be approved. In contrast, the Comprehensive Care Summit is really focused on exactly that, comprehensive care, ranging from musculoskeletal systems to people with bleeding disorders and how they manage their lives, as well as the treatments that can be used to improve the lives of people with hemophilia. So it's a much more focused meeting. It's a smaller meeting. There's opportunities, of course, for networking at both meetings, but networking is probably a little bit easier at the Comprehensive Care Summit because it's smaller and there's a greater chance of running into the right people at the right time.
That makes good sense. Emna, would you like to expand on that or add any comments?
Yes, maybe I will add that this year the Comprehensive Care Summit is made in collaboration with a community, which is a Hamnet, And as Comprehensive Care Summit will be held in Dubai, so the community of the inherited bleeding disorders from this region, I mean the MENA region, North Africa and Middle East, will have the opportunity easily to attend such event of the World Federation of Hemophilia. And maybe it will be easy, as Glenn said before, to build network and interaction with the other person from the region, the other regions of the world.
It's over 40 hours of educational sessions, so it's a comprehensive review of how to manage bleeding disorders within our community, our global community.
I am going to be attending this year's summit. I have a couple of responsibilities. And since I will be there, I intend to do some recording so that I can share parts of my experience and excerpt sound bites from people who are there with the Bloodstream audience. I think what would help round out what I'm going to be creating is if the three of us could meet again after the summit to do a little 15, 20-minute capsule. What were the big takeaways? What were the highlights? And we'll deliver those to the community through the Bloodstream podcast. How does that sound?
Sounds terrific.
Great. Emna, you game for that?
Yes.
Another 8 p.m. from Tunisia call with me down the road?
With pleasure.
Now that I have the app, it should be easier.
Yeah, now we got Glenn onboarded. We don't want to waste that. We want to get him back in here as soon as possible. Well, let me just one more time remind everybody who's listening, and then we'll do some final comments. WFH.org is the World Federation's website. You can go there to navigate to the page on the Comprehensive Care Summit. /CCS2025 is the specific web address, and we will have a link in the program notes as well where you can go learn more and ask any questions that you have about the summit or the World Federation of Hemophilia. Final comments, Glenn, and then Emna.
Well, these kinds of get-togethers they're not only a lot of fun, but they really are educational, and all of us learn something new from them. And when we bring together all of the different disciplines that contribute toward the care of people with bleeding disorders, it's a synergistic. When we bring together the multidisciplinary groups that are all part of the overall care for people with bleeding disorders, it's a synergistic kind of an environment where ideas come out and plans for research, clinical research, improved treatment, advocacy with governments, all of that gets distilled within a conference like this, and people go home energized.
I can validate that comment. Emna?
It's a unique event where the different stakeholders, including the patients, including all the healthcare providers, that meet together, interact together to improve, to learn how to deal with the challenges in order to improve the level of care in the world. So yes, it's a unique event where different people met with a different track at a level of a comprehensive care, because the care of inherited bleeding disorders cannot be done if it is not a comprehensive team, including the patients and their family themselves.
Perfectly said. One more time, WFH.org. The link is in the program notes to learn more about the Comprehensive Care Summit 2025 taking place in Dubai, April 23rd to the 25th. I will be there and doing some content capture, story capture that will come out here through Bloodstream, and Emna and Glenn will join me maybe sometime in May or June to provide a debrief and capsule from their perspectives. So Glenn and Emna, I appreciate you battling through the technological problems, the time differences, and being able to get this information about the summit out to the community. And I'm excited to see you both in about 2 months' time around the world. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. A pleasure, Patrick.
That was awesome. Thank you, Patrick. So now let's get to our new gene therapy segment. We're back with season 2. We have a new host for our gene therapy segment this year, Hannah Berry. I am so excited to introduce her to the Bloodstream audience. Some of you know Hannah Berry. She has been an advocate in the bleeding disorders community for a long time. She's personally connected. She actually was the program director at Colorado after I left. So here at Believe, we stole her away. We stole 2 Colorado people away.
It's that Colorado to Believe Limited pipeline.
I know. I know, but we're so excited for her to contribute to Bloodstream. This is her first segment, and she knocked it out of the park. We actually have Dr. Mark Kay on the segment today. He is a bit of a warhorse when it comes to gene therapy. He's a pioneer. He's at Stanford University, and he's going to walk Hannah through the major scientific hurdles that had to be overcome to get us here. And she also has a genetic counselor from Colorado, actually, to talk to us about some of those hurdles as well. So, Hannah,
Wow.
we're so excited to welcome you to the Bloodstream world. Let's hear what you got, girl.
Hello, Bloodstream listeners. If you joined us last year, you heard us dive into the exciting details of HemeGenix approval for hemophilia B. Since then, innovation hasn't stopped or slowed down. Research continues to leap hurdles, and we're so excited to continue to explore what's next. In this segment, we're asking, where's the science heading? We know HemeGenix is here, but what comes after? On today's episode, we're going to sit down with a researcher and a genetic counselor to take a look at how gene therapy for hemophilia began and where it could be going from here. For decades, the bleeding disorders community has been at the forefront of research and innovations, and there have been many humans and four-legged friends who have helped make this possible. So, as we kick off this new year, we are so excited to dive into conversations with experts in gene therapy to explore what we've learned within the bleeding disorders community and how it can make an even bigger impact, both inside and outside of it. First, hello! My name is Hannah Berry, and I just celebrated my first year as the Patient Advocacy Manager here at Believe Limited. And let me tell you what, wow, has it been weird? Has it been emotional? And by golly, it has been just about the best time of my life so far in my 29 years of age. I grew up hearing the stories of my cousins passing away from contaminated blood products that was supposed to save their lives, a story that I'm sure many listeners can resonate with me today. Since graduating college in 2017, go Hawkeyes! I've worked boots on the ground for bleeding disorders organizations, helping with advocacy, camp youth programs, and various other needs, making sure always advocating for the health equity of the community and other rare disease groups. What I've learned from my time in bleeding disorders nonprofit work is that the work is not yet finished, and I am dedicated to continuing to educate myself and spread that information to listeners like you. Though, enough about me. Before we get back to discussing the ins and outs of gene therapy, this segment is brought to you by CSL Behring, a global biotherapeutics leader focused on serving the rare disease community by providing innovative therapies. They now have a first-of-its-kind treatment for hemophilia B. To learn more about this treatment option, visit beyondhemeb.com and download the B Support app from the App Store or Google Play to stay up to date on relevant information and manage your treatment story. Once again, this segment has been brought to you by CSL Behring, which now has a first-of-its-kind hemophilia B treatment. Visit beyondhemeb.com or download B Support wherever you get your apps for more information. To set the stage, let's take a moment to hear from Dr. Mark Kay, a professor of pediatrics and genetics, as well as the head of the Human Gene Therapy Department at Stanford University, about some of the incredible hurdles research has come within the bleeding disorders community.
Hemophilia became a popular disease to go after because, first of all, there was a large animal model of the disease that recapitulated the human disease well. There's a canine model. Secondly, we knew from genetics and from protein replacement therapies that we only needed to replace a relatively small amount of the coagulation factor to really alter the course of the disease. We could measure the protein product directly in the blood, which was the biomarker we needed to measure. We could measure coagulation, we could measure the clotting factor, and we knew what percent, how much clotting factor would result in how much improvement in the disease. One other point, we published papers showing that you could get therapeutic levels of coagulation factor 9 first in mice and then in hemophilia B dogs. And this was kind of the aha moment, because Not only did we have therapeutic levels, it seemed to be sustained.
Fast forward to the early 2000s, scientists start the race on the first clinical trials. While they showed promises, challenges like immune responses to viral delivery systems initially slowed progress. But as we know, advancements in technology soon cleared those hurdles.
Unlike what was seen in animals, when we finally got to a therapeutic dose in humans, the factor 9 level started off to be therapeutic. It was around 10 or 12%. But then, unlike the animals, it actually fell and went back to baseline. And that was totally unexpected based on the animal studies.
By the mid 2010s, trials showed longer lasting increases in the factor 9 level, giving patients the chance to move away from regular factor replacement therapy. Let's hear from Dr. Marquet about this.
And then there was a second vector that gained popularity called adenoviral vectors, and those could give therapeutic high levels of coagulation factor. There was some immunogenicity and toxicity, which also made it clinically irrelevant as the preclinical testing went. And then finally, there was a vector called recombinant adeno-associated viral vectors. Once people realized that it could be used safely to get therapeutic levels of clotting factor 9, first in mice, then in hemophilia B dogs, and then ultimately in humans.
In 2002, we hit a milestone when the FDA approved of Hemgenix, the first gene therapy approval for hemophilia B, a one-time treatment changing lives. Looking back at gene therapy's journey reminds us that the race is not over. It's a blueprint for what's possible as we keep jumping the hurdles of science and medicine. We are so excited to continue conversations today with Dr. Marquet alongside Kaylee Dollerschell, a genetics counselor at the Center for Cancer and Blood Disorders in Colorado, who can share more about the different cross applications of gene therapies.
In certain types of gene therapy, an individual may require going through something to prepare their body for gene therapy. There's certain types of gene therapy that are called in vivo therapies, where we are giving somebody their treatment directly into the body, and it hopefully goes to where it's supposed to and does its job. And there's not a lot of preparation that has to be done to the body to receive that treatment. Things like hemophilia A and hemophilia B are those kind of common examples in my world. There's also types of gene therapy called ex vivo, where we are typically needing to take your cells out to kind of prepare the cells with gene therapy outside the body. There's other technologies that are getting a little bit more creative, where maybe they're not specifically giving you back a full functioning copy of the gene that's impacted, but maybe they're just kind of going around the gene that's impacted altogether.
As gene therapy advances, researchers are exploring how these techniques could be applied to other conditions. Could approaches used in hemophilia help shape the future of other genetic disorders?
So, for example, there's a new treatment for sickle cell that is not necessarily giving you a genetic change or genetic copy of the sickle cell gene back in its full functioning copy, although some of them are doing that too. But this one's actually impacting another part of the DNA that increases your production of fetal hemoglobin, which ends up kind of helping your sickle cell disease in general. So it's just one of those that sometimes we're going directly to the source to try to give you a fix, and sometimes we're just kind of making a path around it.
There's a trial that I believe is going to start very soon, where the way they're going to do this is they're going to use a gene editing technology in addition to the gene therapy. So I'm sure that many of the listeners have heard of CRISPR or CRISPR engineering. And I just want to say there's all sorts of new genome editing tools that are being developed.
As gene therapy advances, so do the tools shaping the future, like CRISPR. Many have heard of it, but what exactly and how could it impact gene therapy?
With CRISPR, what people have done is they've engineered this Cas9 or caspase 9 protein to work in mammalian cells. And it will only cut DNA, or primarily cut DNA, when it's guided to a specific sequence in the genome. And basically then the Cas9 uses what's called these guide RNAs, or they're RNAs that actually will bind to the nuclease. One arm of it binds to the nuclease, and the other arm seeks out a sequence that it recognizes in the genome. And then it brings the nuclease to that site in the genome and can make a DNA break. And when the DNA tries to repair itself, because naturally our DNA gets broken, there's DNA repair mechanisms. If there's a lot of other DNA there, such as DNA coming in from the AAV vector, it will basically try to repair it and insert that DNA into that break at a frequency that's high enough that it can be therapeutic. And I think that this is a space to watch, because there's many different ways to do this. I don't think there's going to be one size fits all, but I think this is a hugely expanding space, and I think something that it's very exciting.
Gene therapy isn't just the future. It's here transforming lives. With advancements like CRISPR and expanding applications, the possibilities keep growing. But science never stops, and neither will we. We'll keep bringing you expert insights, real stories, and the latest breakthroughs. Once again, I'm Hannah Berry. Thank you for listening to It's a Whole New World, a gene therapy segment. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Glenn, Emna, as well as Hannah. Nice job on the first segment. Dr. K and Kaylee for participating in today's show. Thanks as always to sponsor Takeda, bleedingdisorders.com, as well as CSL Behring for supporting our gene therapy segment. We literally could not produce this show without their support, so thank you for that support. All right, Bradfordo, next episode comes. I don't think I've ever heard you make that exact sound before, so
I know.
treat for me today. But we're going to do this again soon, March 14th. That's when the next one will come out. What can listeners expect to hear then?
Oh my gosh, we have a physician that's returning. Dr. Nathan Connell is coming back. He's awesome. He's also on Twitter. I love that dude. He's on Twitter. He specializes in VWD, which is great, but he talks to Patrick about some of his takeaways from ASH, which was last fall. So to kind of hear about the ins and outs of what our researchers and what our physicians are psyched about in terms of hematology. So we got Dr. Connell on the podcast next time.
It's a goodie. And with that, that is all for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Bloodstream Podcast, in spite of what I said at the top of the episode, to have the next episode delivered to you the moment it goes live.
And as always, you can email us at mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com. You can inquire about all the stuff. If you'd like to be on the podcast, if you'd like to be cast in one of our films, or if you have a story that you want to tell, or if you have a guest that you think would be awesome, we'd love to hear from you. So check us out on mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com or on social media.
And with that, I am your host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I'm your other host, Amy Bradford.
Until next time, take self-care of yourself. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.